Back for another week of master classes. We're now set into set 10, and we have a couple comps that are doing super well on this patch. So right now is patch 13.23, and today we're just gonna be discussing those three comps. Some of them, how to counter them, because you're gonna be seeing this a lot in your games. What to do if you're contested, because same reason. Really good comps. People will play them. If a couple of people are looking to angle that in your game, I would advise you to not contest because of the reduced bag sizes. It is really hard to play contested now and for multiple people to hit. So let's get into that. Before we get into the specific comps, which are going to be Country Samira, Akali Karthus, Disco TF, and then I'll end on Legendary Flex. Basically just how to like cap out games and how to like win games from really, if you have a good spot. I'll just talk about some general info first, just about the patch, just about the set, and then just about Legendary Flex. If you have any questions, I have the VC chat open, so you can type them, you can unmute your mic and ask. But for any big questions, feel free to leave them for the end, and I'm happy to stay after class and help anybody out. Okay, so some general info. As with most sets, but this one specifically, you need 2 carries. There are very, very small occasions where you're able to just solo carry a backline or solo carry a melee frontline unit and have them just like 1v9. You need 2 carries in the sets, as with most. Ideally, these 2 carries don't do the same thing and they help cover each other's weaknesses. So a really clear example, this is why the Karthus Akali comp is so good, or at least one of the reasons, is Karthus, right? He prioritizes the 5 lowest HP targets, and then Akali prioritizes, or not prioritizes, she's just mechanically set to target the corner, the farthest unit from her. So these synergize extremely well because Karthus, normally your backline corner carry is your main carry, right? So then Karthus will hit them and chunk them for maybe like 60-70%, probably 60%. And then if you position your Akali, your KDA Akali, to hit the corner with the shuriken, you're able to essentially basically 100-0 the enemy's backline corner unit if they forget to uncorner it. So this is what I mean. Having a dual carry system is extremely important, and they help cover each other's weaknesses. So we have like AoE versus single target. That would be another example. And then in the Samira comp, right, we have our Samira as our main backline DPS carry, and then our Dreadsteel and Urgot providing frontline some extra damage and a bit of utility from the Dreadsteel / Hecarim. So that's just an important thing to remember, that you need 2 carries on your board, especially late game. Early game, it can be fine, but late game, mid game to late game, you definitely need 2 carries. The compositions we're going to be talking about today, I left out a level 9 Legendary Flex. I'll show some examples at the end, but I don't consider it like an actual comp, just because it's a flex comp. Like, you just play basically what you hit, and you play based off of your items and augments. So actual compositions will be like Karthus, Samira, etc. Okay, so let's get into the 3 best comps to play. First one is Country Samira. You might have already run into this. Okay, if you played the ranked ladder, I'm guaranteed that you have run into this. Front to back mixed damage comp based off of Country and Executioner, with Samira being your main unit. And this is the unit that you want to itemize first. And then depending on your chosen, you'll throw your leftover items either on Urgot or Akali based off of that. But essentially for both versions, you need to have Samira 3. This is your must. You're going to be slow rolling on level 7. Any econ augment is very helpful for this. And then if possible, to fully capo, you'll be going Urgot 3, Vex 3. Unless it's 4 Executioner, then it's okay to bypass the Urgot 3, as you see in this board. Because with 4 Executioner, or at least Executioner chosen, you'll be wanting to play 4 Executioner, and then you can itemize Akali instead, and then look to push levels. But if you're close to Urgot 3, then you might as well just finish that off. But you will be on level 7. This is a clear level 7 board for... level 7 board for the Country Samira. So basically you just have 5 country to activate that 5 out of 5. You're going to be getting, I think it's called the Midnight Dreadsteed. So that's like the second version of the Hecarim. So he provides a little bit of Omnivamp, which is super good once he enters the battlefield. You have really good frontline. You could 3-star your Amumu, Bramble, Decall, Warmog, just your classic tank items, Heartsteel, or Steadfast Heart, Redemption, these are fine as well, Gargoyles. So you have your Guardian and then some Washer as your front line. And then your back line, you're just going to have your Executioner, so Samira and Vex. And then Vex pairs Emo with Amumu, and then of course Samira is Country. Best in slot right now is just Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, Giant Slayer, preferably in this order. Early game, if you have Infinity Edge first before Last Whisper, it's not that big of a deal, but you definitely will need a Last Whisper and Infinity Edge, and then Giant Slayer is good late game to help deal with the tanks because you will be hitting frontline first in this comp. Remember that for Country, your Dreadsteed / your Hecarim will always be entering from your left, so then he'll probably like come around here. So it's okay to position on the left side. You have an extra tank that will be coming in once your team has taken some damage. And then the last one is, because it's going to be pretty heavily contested, I've only played this comp. I've only had the opportunity to play this comp a couple times, just because if you see multiple people pivoting in or looking to pivot, this level 7 roll down for your Samira 3s and your 3 stars is going to be super tough. And if you are super contested, you could just play Country tempo. So just, you can still play 5 Country, but just the 2-star version, and look to push levels, maybe pivot out later, or definitely pivot out later to a stronger comp, and you don't have to reroll and contest everyone else. Vex items, if you can 3-star your Vex as well, that's super good. This is another example of like a duo carry. Urgot is a great one as well, but sometimes you don't have the items because both of these use a lot of swords. So Vex, you need 1 mana item, either blue buff or Shojin. Even though she has emo trait, which reduces her maximum mana, and she gets mana whenever an ally dies, her mana pool is still relatively high. So either Shojin or blue buff, and then JG, Rabadons, Nashers, Archangels, any of this is fine. Yeah. And then for Akali, if you do have the chosen Executioner Samira, then it's ideal to play 4 Executioner. This is going to be a level 8 board. And then items on Akali, Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, Deathblade, Red Buff is actually really good on Akali. Not only does the extra attack speed help for more casts, but because she'll hit like the entire board, she'll be able to apply the red buff, so the wounds and burn effect to the entire enemy board, and that is super good. One thing to note, I think in my previous class or just before, we talked about the change of Infinity Edge. Now that Executioners are basically like set 9's Vanquishers, so basically Executioner units already have built-in critical strike once the trait is activated. And then in set 10, they made a change to Infinity Edge, where if the unit can already crit and builds an Infinity Edge or an Jewel Gauntlet, instead of just like negating that double effect, they'll now get plus 10% critical strike damage. So that's a super good. So don't worry about like, oh, you already have Executioner buff, like you can already crit building an Infinity Edge. It actually is still super good. Some benefits from the attack damage, the crit strike, and then this new added extra 10% crit damage. So don't worry about that. Still build it. It's actually, I would say right now is best in slot. So don't worry about doubling up there. So that's the Country Samira. Super good. The next one I want to talk about is Akali Karthus. So this is a comp that I've been playing a lot more, not only because it's less contested, but because it's extremely flexible. So what is this? This is now a back to front mixed damage comp. So a lot of the times you'll see front to back. What that means is we're just hitting frontline first. Once the enemy frontline dies, then we can move on to the backline. This is the opposite. So Karthus Akali, this is a back to front damage composition. We'll be hitting the backline first because of the Karthus ult and hitting the 5 lowest health targets, and generally on a board you have your high health frontline in the front line, of course, and your low health carries, or lower health relative to your frontline carries in the backline. So they will get targeted first by Karthus, and then as I mentioned, KD Akali will target the furthest enemy to her when she uses her ability, and then she will dash to them and deal damage. So make sure that you position Akali on the opposite side of the enemy carry that you want to snipe. Okay, so what does this board look like? This is a couple examples. So we have our Pentakill chosen here, where we'll be playing 5 Pentakill, and our Executioner chosen here. Basically, it just depends. Like you'll drop Gnar. If you have 5 Pentakill, then you'll be playing Gnar. If you have the Executioner version, you could drop Gnar and play your Vex instead. Then even add in a Poppy for Emo and Mosher. Very flexible, and then frontline is basically just whatever you hit, some form of either Sentinel, Guardian, or Bruiser. It doesn't really matter, but you just need a frontline with Pentakill activated. And this is a board that you'll be establishing on level 8. So this is either 4-2 or 4-5. So you're chosen on one of these boards, or on this stage when you are looking to roll, and then aim for that Karthus chosen. Even the Akali chosen is fine too, depending on your items and just your spot. It depends from there. this is a board that you could really easily transition from the Superfan board because of the Guardian and Sentinel, right? So Guardian, you have your, oh no, I forgot her name, but it's Kennen plus Nico, right? You have Kennen plus Nico for your Guardian, and then from your Sentinel Superfan, you have Lilia. So then you could play this board going into like stage 3, of course, and it's very good then, but then even in stage 4 for a little bit, it's fine. You play the Superfan version based off of your chosen, they'll have an extra item catered towards them, and then once you have the suitable replacements, like your Thresh for Guardians, or your Blitzcrank Mordekaiser for your Sentinels, then you can sell the Superfans, especially once you have 3 items to carry, and then transition to this higher capped board. This is the, I think, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the level 7 version, so your 8 can be any flexible unit, any valuable unit. So this could be Alawi, which is, I would say right now, the best flexible unit that just fits on any board. Even at like a Ziggs backline for some shred, Sono for utility, or even just like on like 2 Akalis is fine, 2 Karthus is fine as long as you have a 2nd generation item. So your 8th unit is very flex. And then in the Executioner version, I would just play this Poppy as your 8th for trades. The very last thing I'll say for this comp is, although it is physical damage and magic damage, you still want to have some sort of Sunder and Shred. So Yorick sunders, his goals when they attack will sunder. If you don't have that, then it's fine to build Elastos Brown Akali. And then for the other department, Magic Shred, Shiv is better than Spark in this case. If you think about Spark, it only shreds the magic resist of units. Let's say we put it on Yorick, right? It only shreds the magic resist of units within a couple hex radius. However, the Karthus ability is going to be mostly targeting like the backline, right? So Shiv will hit multiple units rather than just a circle area of the holder of Spark. So that's why Shiv is better than Spark here. Spark just affects like the nearby units. However, Shiv can hit up to multiple units on the board, even the backline. Okay, so that's how to play Akali Karthus. Now this is basically how to counter it. So we've been I was talking a lot about how Karthus will affect or target the enemy backline. Let's say that this is now your board, right? And then the enemy board doesn't really matter what they have, but let's say they have a Karthus and then like an Akali. Right, so then how do we want to counter this? Basically, if we have an Alawi, super good, we can use corner or backline bait for the Akalis and Karthuses. Basically what's going to happen is the Akali is going to jump to one of the tentacles based off whether she's on the left or the right side, and then the Karthus is going to be ulting these tentacles. So then both of these major units abilities are going to be wasted on respawnable tentacles once the Alawi ults. And then generally, Alawi has quite a large mana pool, and the Karthus and Akali will be casting most of the time before Alawi. So it works out really perfectly. Like the Akali and the Karthuses, they'll attack our tentacles, Alawi will cast, respawn them, and then hey, they're back up for another soaking of the Karthus ults. So super good Alawi against Karthus, Akali. If you don't have Alawi, then you could just use, if you have a target dummy, or you could just play any backline bait units, anything that you have, and then make sure that you do not corner your main carry, so then they don't get targeted by the Akali, and this will be pretty good. However, make sure that this type of positioning is only good against Akali Karthus boards. If you're not against them, make sure you reposition your tentacles, either put them on either side for frontline, or just put them like both on one side of the enemy's same side. So then they're actually going to be tanking something, because you do not want to be backlining your tentacles against regular front to back boards, only against back to front. So that's how you counter Akali Karthus. And then our very last board that we'll talk about today, very popular as you might have also seen in your games, is Disco TF. This is an extremely stable level 8 board. Does fall off a little bit later into like stage 5, especially stage 6. So that's why we'll be needing to go level 9. But we'll just talk about the level 8 first. So this is a front to back, back to front to back, or back to front to back, as in like we're talking about front to back again. Magic damage, and this is a stall comp. And you might be thinking, why is this a stall comp? Well, Disco, similar to the Dragon set, if you remember Jade, the Disco balls will provide health and attack speed for all the units periodically, as long as they begin the combat adjacent to a disco ball. And you might not realize this, but the attack speed actually stacks. So the longer the fight goes, the stronger your board actually gets, and the stronger your units get. So that's why it's a stall comp. And what does this mean? It means you need a strong front line for sure. A lot of the disco units are lower cost, so like the Nami, Tark, Gragas. These are more like trait bots. The individual units by themselves are not very good. They're just here for the trait, which means that your other units like your Blitzcrank, Zac, and Echo, these definitely need to have tank items on them, and they need to be 2-starred. This is another level 8 board, so you'll be establishing this on either 4-2 or 4-5. And then because this is magic damage, you'll need some sort of shred. Now, because we're front to back, it's okay to have a spark. So you can spark your Blitzcrank. This is just an example of items that work. Or you could shiv your Lulu, that is fine. But you do need to have some sort of magic resist shred. And then my last point, as I mentioned, even though this board is extremely good, if you could hit your Blitzcrank 2, Twisted Fate 2 on level 8, you do need to be going level 9 to cap out. And then on level 9, let's say you have your 6 Disco, you could play like Alawi 2 over Zac, your Ziggs 2, Sona 2, etc. And then same thing for our bottom board here. But yeah, and then if you're level 9, you'll have an easier time of 2-starring the Ziggs. If you don't have your Ziggs on level 8, which is totally common because it's a legendary unit, and you have the Dazzler Twisted Fate, then you could just play like a Bard instead, or even a Lux to pair with the EDM Zac, and then you'll EDM adapt your Zac for the extra CC. Okay, so that is the Disco TF board. Make sure that your Blitzcrank is holding most of your tank items, and then your utility items can go on your Zac, and yeah, pretty good. So those are the 3 really popular, really strong compositions right now that are dominating the ladder, at least in North America. We'll now talk about level 9 legendary flex. So what does this mean is you're going to be rolling down a lot of gold on level 9, or at least transitioning from another board to on level 9 and looking for a 5-cost chosen. And here are some examples. So first off, we'll just say like you'll be making your boards based off your items and augments. Because we're playing a level 9 legendary flex, you're basically just going to be playing basically what you hit. And these type of boards can contest top 1s, top 2s. It's super good. And I'll talk about the front line first. So we have kind of 2 options for front line. Regardless, we're playing Alawi. This unit is so good until she gets nerfed, or if she gets nerfed, we're still going to be playing her. So Alawi is on both versions of the board, and you put your tentacles for extra tank. And then there's 2 versions. You could be playing your Sentinel Bruisers or your Guardian Bruisers. Guardian Bruiser Mosher. And the way I really distinguish this is 2 ways. Either one, it just depends what you hit. Like if you hit your Blitzcrank 2, Zac 2, Echo 2, and you have like Alawi, well, of course you're playing the Sentinel version. And then vice versa, if you hit your York 2, and then you have like Thresh 2, but only like Blitzcrank 1, well then you're going to be playing your second version, right? The second one is based off the York, because it's a 5-cost, right? If you have York items, so like Bruiser items like Bloodthirster, Sterix, Titans, then you'll be wanting to play the York version rather than the Sentinel version. So that's just how to differentiate between like what frontline you want to play. It's not that like specific, but yeah, as long as you play one of these 2, you should be fine. And then level 9, you can add a Kiana for extra items, or just any good unit on level 9. And then I don't recommend playing around Kayn right now. If you hit a early Kayn, like a level 7 Kayn, and then you have some like AP items like throw a blue buff and a JG and like, I don't know, a Gunblade, you can either save a lot of HP, or you can get a lot of gold from farming off him. But on late game, I don't really recommend him. Doesn't do much damage, dies really fast, and has no CC. Jhin is okay. Jhin is really good if you have the front line to sustain him, and you need Shojin on him, or not need, but I would say it's like extremely good on him because of his mana change to 50. So now he only needs 2 auto to summon a violin, so he's super good. And then the rest of the 5 costs are very good to play around. There's more like an AP centered like Dazzler backline. If you hit like, let's say even like you could have your chosen Dazzler Twisted Fate, and then you just like go level 9 and play around these other units. Or let's say you just hit that chosen Twisted Fate on level 9, which is perfectly like common, because even though you're level 9, if you're rolling down, you only have a 10% chance of seeing a 5-cost chosen. which means most of the time when you're rolling on level 9 without a chosen, you're just going to be seeing 4 costs. And if you're getting towards that like 25 gold, 20 gold, 15 gold, you sometimes just have to take what comes, and this is a perfectly acceptable option. And the one on the bottom is more like 80 centered, where you can carry around your Lucian, give him rapid fire with Caitlyn if he is Jazz chosen, and then you don't need the Caitlyn if he's rapid fire chosen. And then you have like Dazzler from these two, you have Jazz for a lot of traits, and then a suitable frontline based off of what I said earlier, based off what you hit, based off your items, and yeah. So these are just like 2 versions. There's plenty other versions you can play. As you're level 9, you're rolling down, and you're just playing flexible. So yeah. Okay, so that is all for today. We talked about 3 compositions and then level 9 flex. We talked about Samira, how to play. We talked about Akali Karthus, and then the last one is playing around Disco TF and then going level 9. I hope today helps you, and hopefully this helps you out in your games, gets you that LP, and just helps you understand the game more.